Hello everybody, this is Juntas. Today we're taking a look at a Fireclaw Druid build. So about 2 years ago I made one with an Elders, and this is a revisit guide. A few weeks ago I got a comment that asked to use a setup that I never really thought it was possible for this setup. That plus 2 other setups are going to be shown in the video. So there's quite a bit of gear to cover. I will not focus too much on the gameplay because as most people know, the Fireclaw Druid is more a PvP build. But the gear is pretty interesting. So yeah, in total 3 freaking gear setup. It's gonna be a bit to go through, but we will roll the intro now and just get to this. And so then, as mentioned, time for the gear. This is going to be covering 3 different gear setups, and they all work very differently. I will however say that the gear that I'm using right now, which I'm just going to show you now, more details coming later. These items here are definitely the best. I couldn't really find a better, more optimal, decent setup than this one. Both of them, I would say, even like PvP and PvM, you can get a little more tricked out for PvP, but definitely for PvM, this was the best setup that I could find. But we will not, use these items for all the 3 different gear setups, so it's going to be a little different for all 3 of them. So then, in the stash I carry all these different items here. You can see something like Dream, Crescent Moon, you can see Yellows, some really insane gloves here. Angelic Wings, Ravenfrost Maras, some Sandstorm Treks and Gore Riders, Fool's Weapon, and some different small charms. These are all the items I'm going to be using for the 3 different setups. So the first one is unfortunately not as good as I hoped. I'm gonna throw up the comment again from the guy that posted it recently, some weeks ago. He suggested using a Dream with Crescent Moon, and I was totally, oh my god, this could actually work. I will just now do a little clip now to kind of demonstrate if that is worth it or not. Sadly it isn't. Oh, and by the way, it's on players 1, and again just showing that I'm wearing Crescent Moon, Dream, and Dream, dual Dream. If people don't know, the Holy Shock aura stacks, and I'm also using Infinity Mercenary, so it's pretty strong. You could maybe use some small charms with lightning damage. They go up to 2 to 99 damage or something like that. It helps a little bit on the lightning damage, but still not gonna be a big difference. But yeah, just wanted to mention the small charms. Anywho, here's why it doesn't work. This is on players 1 with a level 30 Holy Shock aura, and they're basically not even taking damage. They're healing more than they're taking damage nearly. Yeah, I really hope that this would have worked so much better. When I saw that comment, I was like, yeah, I have to try this out. and I'm nearly dying as I'm trying to demonstrate it. But yeah, as soon as I saw that comment, I knew I just had to check it out, because I really thought that would be, you know, a way to solve the AoE issues that Fireclaw obviously has. But yeah, I have another thing coming up in the skills section that's also gonna kind of look into that. Most people probably know what I'm gonna show, but more on that later. And so the next setup is of course for PvP. A lot of people know that Fireclaws is amazing for PvP. It's actually the really only use for the build. It of course does PvP, PvM pretty well, but most people are gonna make it for PvP, and this is the setup for PvP, kind of like if you have no budget. So the gloves, I'm gonna talk a little bit about them. I didn't even know that tri-race gloves existed, but apparently they do. I have never seen tri-race gloves before, but this was the, you know, the thread I found on JSP. I'm gonna assume these are imported Shop-it gloves. I don't know if they're like a cheat glove or whatever, but I'd seen two-race before on live. Pretty sure I even owned a pair maybe. But yeah, this is amazing. These are very good for PvP. Items here. This ring here is gonna use for all the builds, all the setups. It's just amazing with the resistance, strength, life, the attack rating is very important as well. And the build is pretty fun too. I'm just gonna, you know, explain these items that I don't switch out now. But yeah, the build here, as you see, it's a pretty insane build. Most people would probably not think that both open wounds, lifesteal, and faster hit recovery can spawn on the builds together, but apparently it can from that GSP thread or whatever. It's kind of like the same thing with the gloves. If you don't want to deal with crafted or rare builds, you can just use Verdungo's build. It's just as fine. Faster hit recovery on it, damage reduction, etc. I just kind of went with these because I'm able to for testing it. It's yeah, it's pretty fun, this build here. If I had to tone it a bit down, I would remove the open wounds and maybe like lower the life, the strength, something like that, just to make it a little more tame. Because wow, this build is amazing. And then for obviously PvP setup again, we are using a combo Angelic Ring together with the Fools for a massive amount of attack rating. Angelic, everyone knows that gives a lot of attack rating, the set bonus together. And then the Fools here, it's not really that amazing, but you see the attack speed, that's what really makes it good. I'm still gonna hit slower. I only think I'm hitting at 6 frames for Fireclaw, something like that. So it's, you know, it's too slow actually, but it's, you know, as good as it's gonna get for Fools. Yeah, this one is just so amazing. And the sockets are 4015s. Probably just gonna throw this up on the screen if you don't know what those duels are. But that's it kind of for the PvP setup. Pretty standard. You could maybe also go with another armor than Enigma if you're not really gonna be teleporting around much. That's definitely an option. And the helm here is just so much fun damage. Actually, I guess I can find a little time on the clip now here just to kind of show you the difference. Because a lot of people are maybe just gonna default to Jealous main. But when you see this, you're not even gonna want to. So this helm here, it literally gives like 1.2, 1.5k more max minimum damage as well than Jealous main. However, Jealous main does give some nice resistance. So if you don't really have the budget, you know, for crazy small charms, you can't really get good, you know, jewelry, etc. Jealous main is still amazing for the resistance and the overall smoothness of stats. Also, the faster hit recovery makes you, you know, you can reach for 65% faster hit recovery, which would give you a pretty high breakpoint. But the damage here on this helm is just too good. However, of course, this helm is out of my reach. This is, you know, a GG roll. This is like real best item you're looking at right now. You're not gonna find, you know, you would have to look a crazy long time on JSP or seller item sites for whatever to find a comparable item. So for most people, including myself, I could never afford this on live server at least, I would just go with Jealous main. That's definitely a safe choice. So that was the dream setup and the PvP setup. So what is the third setup? Well, it's the setup that most people would probably aim for, because the other two are too niche or too not really working that well, or just too expensive to make. So this is the setup that I would recommend for pretty much everyone. It has the cheap items, it has kind of many ways that you can build around, so you don't have to go specifically my items, but it's just overall really cheap. I like the setup just because of the price, so that's pretty much the third setup. So the Draculs, we'll talk about that first. This is kind of like a fun thing. Everyone believes you just have to slap on Draculs and you're immortal. That's the case for at least many melee builds. Even something like an assassin or like a frenzy barb or something that's not like a smiter. Sadly, this is not the case for this one, however. Even though we attack extremely fast, I'm just gonna show you now with this, this weapon here, just how fast it looks. This is a ridiculously fast attack speed. I have never seen anything like this. Only a few builds compares. But even though we attack that fast, Draculs is not really proccing that often, and it doesn't really seem to have the same effect that you normally see from Draculs, where you have maybe 200 life left, life tap procs, and you're instantly at 3000 or whatever. Sadly, it just doesn't have that. I'm very disappointed in the performance of the Draculs gloves. It's still, however, really, really great, but it's just not as good as I was hoping. So if you don't have access to the Draculs gloves, there are some other gloves now, like Lava Gout, or even like your own crafted crushing blow gloves that I will just throw up on the screen now. I'm just gonna say here that Draculs is not really needed. It's just how like the best, sort of glove choice that you can choose. Because I want to talk a little about laying of hands, kind of like how damage is done on this build. A lot of people think that maybe something like, Gore Riders, maybe High Lord's Wrath or something like that would be really good on this build because you're attacking as melee. Well, sadly, Fireclaw is mostly just based on synergies and elemental damage, so it's fire damage that you're doing. It's not really based on physical damage. That is also why something like Leech doesn't work that well, and why also enhanced damage doesn't really work that great. So take laying of hands. Everyone knows that these are amazing for demon damage and all that stuff, fire resistance on them as well, but they're just not really worth using just because you're not really getting that much benefit from enhanced damage, and that sucks. I would love to use another pair of gloves that will be better than Draculs or some crafted crushing blow gloves. But I think that's enough for the gloves. Again, I'm a little disappointed in it, but the Draculs, the life tap proc is still really good for survival. I will say that, but yeah, let's move on here. So the gloves, the build even here, Vadunga's Court is kind of just better than other variation that you can think of, like the String of Ears. String of Ears, again, the Leech doesn't really work that well on this build, so we're just gonna go with Vadunga's here because it's pretty cheap. It's not, most people can trade or afford a Vadunga's Court, definitely. So yeah, we will go with that one. And then the rings, Ravenfrost rings, just amazing for attack rating. So that's kind of like the main thing I will use it. Also just because it's pretty inexpensive, especially if you just get a random rolled one. As long as it has over 200 attack rating, you're fine. I think 1 point of dexterity is like 30, 50 attack rating, maybe 75 to 100. So the dexterity of course matters, the 20% roll, but at least just aim for the attack rating base to be over 200. And then the ring is pretty fun. I needed a ring that could kind of help me with my resistance in different gear setup, and this was just perfect for kind of like a smooth resistance cap. The most important part on the ring, how, is just the attack rating, because again we need the attack rating to get at least 10,000 or above 10,000. Yeah, we do have Infinity Mercenary, which will help us with the Conviction Aura and all that shit, but like if the Mercenary is away and suddenly you're not hitting a lot, I just feel like it's easy enough to also get like 6,000-7,000 attack rating, but no real, I can drop these two rings here, and you can see it drop down to 7,000. So even without the rings, I'm still at 7,000. But yeah, it's kind of like up to yourself. If you can't get an attack rating roll on the rings or whatever, but you have access to Infinity, it's fine. But let's move on here. I have to talk a little about that attack rating debate. Everyone kind of knows that Infinity is kind of great for your own attack rating needs. But the boots are a bit boring. Again, I like to use tri-res boots, especially on this build, but the boots here are kind of good. I don't really think get that much benefit out of like elders if you don't need the fire resistance, or water walkers. Again, we already have like 6,000 life buffed up with the call to arms and all that shit, but if you want even more fire resistance, if you want even more life and all that stuff, you can go with water walkers or elders boots. Those are definitely a good choice. I don't really think that gold rides would help that much. I know crushing blow would of course help on boss damage, so that's a thing to consider if you don't really care so much for these normal stat boots, but rather just want pure damage. And so the shield is also kind of fun. You could go with Phoenix, at least I hope that, until I kind of tested it out. So the thing here with the Storm Shield, I'm just gonna read out the little stats here. 35% faster block rate. What does that mean? Well, it means that the animation that which you block is 35% faster. And that makes a huge difference. Right now, I got 73% chance to block, so I'm a little above max block in this case. But the main part why Phoenix Shield doesn't work is of course the Firestorm proc. That interrupts your own Fireclaw damage. So my idea for Phoenix was kind of like, if I can't leech well, or I can't proc the cools well, I still kind of want some good survival. So redemption always sounds kind of great. And also another thing is that we synergize Firestorm. So I was thinking, wow, the Firestorm is gonna be even stronger. It's gonna be like actually damage when it procs and all that stuff. But yeah, in the end, it just doesn't make it worth it because of the Firestorm and the slower block ruining this chance to ever be good. However, the enhanced damage, if you wanted to experiment with a Mayul kind of more physical damage, so you can maybe get leech working, that would be an option. So if you for some reason want to make leech work with a Fireclaw Druid build, Phoenix Monarch would be a way to do it, but I still wouldn't recommend it over Storm Shield. But yeah, just go with Storm Shield. It's too good to pass up on. The stats are just so amazing. It also kind of helps you with lightning and cold resistance, which can be a bit hard to get, as well as the damage reduction. It has a lot of great things, the shield, even for PvM. And then I can also talk a little about the amulets. So if you want again to make more physical damage, you wanted to experiment with that, you should probably just go with High Lord's Wrath. But for the normal setup, I would either go with an amulet like this one, 2 to Druid, some random stats like all resistance, life, dexterity, etc. Or you go with Mars Kaleidoscope. It's cheap, it's easy to get, and that's why I'm rolling with it. I quite like the all resistance as well, together with Yellow's Mane. That just makes capping resistance that much easier. And yeah, then Yellow's Mane here, 30% faster hit recovery, as well as +2 to all druid skills. 30 always, strained energy, whatever. It has so many good stats, Jealous Mane. But mostly the all resistance is gonna help you out so much if you're on a budget to help you cap out the resistance. And then Enigma. Pretty fun to have teleport, especially because we also can switch to Call to Arms, which gives a little bit more, kind of mana stats, and then Spirit Shield. It's a pretty good teleport setup, I will give you. So you can actually get around to teleporting pretty well. Also, if you have 2 rows of mana, so the movement, teleporting from an act to a boss act, whatever, it goes pretty fast even on this build, as long as you switch to Call to Arms and Spirit Shield. So that's why we go with Enigma. Also, Enigma is pretty good overall for PvP as well. And then finally, the weapons. This took a while to get to, but the weapons are pretty fun. So if you wanted to again experiment with Dream setup, you can go with Crescent Moon because of the faceplate. It's still gonna hit pretty fast. I think it's at like 6 or 7 breakpoints. And then for PvP, obviously you need the attack rating to connect with hits. It's very important. So you're gonna go with the Fools and get at least 20 to 40% increased attack speed roll on it. But for most people who are just playing a Fireclaw Druid with a budget and all that stuff, you need to find a 6-socketed faceplate. It can also roll with like 15% enhanced damage or durability, I think. Nah, I probably can't do that. But it can also roll with +3 to attack rating. Mine is just a plain faceplate with 6 sockets. And in the sockets here, I'm throwing in 4 Shale Runes. That's important. You have to do 4 Shale Runes. And then one socket needs to be a 15% increased dual. Or it can also just be another Shale Rune. That's kind of up to yourself. And then the last socket can be whatever you want. since I have the budget, I'm throwing in a 5/5 facet fire duel. So yeah, that's pretty much the thing here with the weapons. I'm also gonna throw up the increased attack speed chart now, so you kind of just see where you kind of should aim for. Again, oh, I actually haven't mentioned this. All attack speed you get from like the gloves or the amulet or belts or whatever, it does not count for Werebear or was it Fireclaw skill. It's either of those two. So the only source of attack speed that helps your own Fireclaw attack speed is from the weapon in your main hand, I believe. So that's kind of the idea with the increased attack speed on this build. You have to get all the attack speed from only the weapon. In this case, I need 95% increased attack speed, and I can get that with shale runes pretty easily. So if you can just access a faceplate with some sockets in it, I mean, you're golden. You have the best BIS weapon for this build. It's pretty cheap actually. As long as you can again get the faceplate with at least 4, I think 5 sockets. Yeah, 5 sockets at least if you're on a budget. But that's pretty much it for all the gear. Could mention again, we use Spirit and Call Times and Switch, and then of course on the mercenary we're using Infinity. And as the last thing, I'm also just gonna talk quickly about the inventory. I have a few small charms I want to kind of just discuss a little bit about also. So of course we go with Shape Skillers with life. Another thing is also, again, I'm not really a fan of 5,000, 6,000, 8,000 life, whatever you can aim for at least for PVM. So if you want other stats than life, you should go for it. I quite like faster one walk, grand charms with skillers on them. They can roll up to 7%. So that's kind of like an option if you don't like your life on your grand charms. And for the small charms, this is a bit of a different setup that I'm normally using. So I'm using some faster hit recovery small charms with all resistance on them. Then I'm using 20 all 5 because I didn't need more faster hit recovery for breakpoint. Then I'm also using this small charm here. This is really good if you don't know about this one actually. Cold damage makes enemies freeze. So if you just have one source of cold damage on your entire gear or your inventory, the mobs are gonna be frozen and kind of freezed. So that's pretty great. And then the poison damage helps you kind of just stop mobs from healing themselves. It can be a bit hard to find cold and poison damage together on a small charm, but it's really great for any melee builds. And then the last 3 are just some all attack rating and life. I can just quickly show the difference on that one because it matters really a lot. You can see here I get almost like 250 attack rating out of 36 attack rating in Werebear. It's pretty amazing. But in my inventory, I wanted to talk a little bit about small charms like this one. You can see here fire damage. I was thinking fire damage, that's pretty good because I'm doing fire damage and it's elemental damage with conviction ore and all that shit. But nah, it didn't really matter much. It actually only gives 26 to 42 fire damage on Fireclaw, so that was a bit disappointing. Another thing you can also consider is to go with these 3 2020s or with dexterity on them. But that's really only if you want to experiment with physical damage. Even like, let's see, Mayul, even like Mayul only gets like 20 more max damage with one of these small charms. So if you filled up your entire inventory with 3 2020s, it would only do like, well, let's see what it does now. It only does like 700 damage now, so maybe do at most, I don't know, 1.5k damage or something like that. So 3 2020s are not gonna matter a lot for your physical damage. It just sadly won't. And that is why I'd rather get more attack rating out of the small charms. Let's see anything else. Yeah, I also have this one. This is always a fun charms. If you don't like all resist charms, you can go with this one or even have faster one walk on them. That's definitely a good option. And so I'm just gonna quickly also explain the stats. Enough strength to just wear your gear, enough dexterity until you feel comfortable with your attack rating. You could also just stop at 136 dexterity for the faceplate. That's up to your own needs if you don't really want to stack attack rating, and then rest into vitality. The resistance is also really easy to cap if you use Yalla's main and Mara's Kaleidoscope. Without those 2 items it gets a bit harder. But I think that's about it. You can see the 11,000 attack rating here and the almost 19 to 20k max Fireclaw damage. So in an earlier part of the video I was talking about the dream setup that was gonna help me on AoE, but I found another way to maybe fix the AoE issues that this build obviously has. Sadly I didn't. Armageddon. I really did try this one out. So we will go over the build now. Summoning is kind of up to yourself. You can go with 1 point into Direwolf and Grizzly, but I wouldn't really recommend it because it takes away points. Also, Herderer Wolverine. I just took this one for kind of like group utility, kind of experiment with attack rating, physical damage. Also just because I don't really care for 6,000 life in PvM for the most part. At one point I even reached, was it 8k? You know, it's insane. So maybe you rather just go with Herderer Wolverine. But for the most part you just take Spirit Wolf and Raven for meat shields. However, they die pretty easy without the synergies and whatnot. Then Shape is of course just, you know, the standard Fireclaw. Shockwave, however, is really insane for PvM. So always get just 1 point into Shockwave for PvM. Hunger is also really crap. Since we're not doing a lot of physical damage, the leech from Hunger is just not worth it. Also, when you're doing Hunger attack, you're literally doing no damage at all. So you're just wasting your time dying, trying to leech a little bit. So yeah, that was not really worth using, sadly. What else could I mention? Yeah, again, Mule is great if you are stacking physical damage. It can leech a little bit better. Also, it helps quite a bit against fire immunes, so it's okay for fire immunes, but that's about it. And so if you wanted to use Armageddon, you will have to, of course, take all these prerequisites here, so that's like 5 wasted points. Cyclone Armor is kind of crap as well. But yeah, once we have Armageddon, we would, of course, take 20 points into that one, which then means that we can't max out one of the synergies to Fireclaw, which then means that you're gonna end up at like, I think I was only at like 13, 14k Fireclaw damage with Armageddon, so that was pretty low compared to what I can reach with, you know, the pelt and everything. You know, if we use these items here and so forth, I can reach almost 20k damage. So Armageddon, some people like it because it also looks flashy, it looks great, it looks fun, it's another button to use, it's fun like that, but it's too reliable. And honestly, at players 8 it only does like 1/4 mob's health, maybe 1/5. It's really crap on players 8. It's too unreliable for PvM as well. I just want good Fireclaw damage. I initially hoped that this would have been a lot better, like the dream setup for AoE, but sadly it just wasn't. And then here at the end I'm going to do the hardest content I can think of for this build. Obviously I'm talking about Chaos Run. A lot of the fire immunes are not broken by Infinity. Well, let's not just say all. Some of them, actually none of them are broken by Infinity. So it's a bit crap for fire damage. But as you can see on players 1, it's doable with Infinity Merc helping you and so forth. I can also just experiment a little bit with Mule here if you kind of want to see that. I'll just try to go up and find some Venom Lords here. You can kind of see, now look at the health bar, the Venom Lord here now. I'm just going to zoom in on that in edits. It's not really going down fast even with Mule, and I'm also slowly dying. So yeah, this is kind of Chaos Run one-on-one. I can't really deal with fire immunes. And I actually have to teleport out now before I'm dying. So yeah, maybe it's wrong to leave the build at a bomber like this one, where I'm basically saying that I can't do damage to the most common elemental in Diablo 2, fire immunes. At least I think fire immunes are kind of like the most common thing. I'm not really sure, but yeah. We can maybe just quickly go to like Frigate Highlands or something like that, just to kind of show off against players 1 here. You know, they're just getting one-shotted. It's so nice to see. Another thing also, it's a pretty relaxed kind of build to play. You can just hold down Fireclaw down if you have it on the right keybind, so that's pretty relaxed to play with. I quite like that. And then just have Shockwave unbind it on the left click. That's a pretty great way to play. But yeah, I'm a bit disappointed with the fire immunes. That definitely halts it a lot. I wouldn't say it as bad as like a fire druid trying to kill fire immunes or something, but it's about as bad, I guess. But you can see how shanked the overseer, it's like 2-shotted. Players 1, it definitely gets close to one-shotting most mobs. It's very fast. And as you also saw on the intro, that are nearly well, not nearly killing Mephisto in like a few hits, but got pretty close to killing Mephisto really fast as well once the mercenaries out helping. I can also mention just really quickly here, the mercenary, people don't really like Infinity Mercenary, oh it's too overpowered, it's gonna carry and all that shit. Yeah, it kinda does. For PvM, the mercenary special and bosses is a big deal. I was trying to show off Mephisto, I think it was on players 1 or something. That definitely felt slower on players 1 without my mercenary helping me with Infinity Conviction Ore than on players 8 when my mercenary was helping me. So again, this is another build that's also very end game oriented because it needs Infinity Mercenary, it needs like Enigma maybe, stuff like that. It can be a bit end game again with the Infinity. Yeah, that rune word is just it's a bit unfortunate that build that rune word has to be build defining for so much in Diablo 2. But yeah, I'm still very happy with the performance. It's so strong, it's so kind of different. You never really see this online as well. It's very unique. And as I also showed, you can gear it up with many different variations, even trying to go more physical damage with Mayul if you want to experiment with that or anything like that. But that's about it. So thank you so much for watching everyone, and have a good one.